focusing on that classroom management. And then we'll also understand like the own little philosophy that God gave me of foundation, regulation, and education, and what that's gonna look like. And I love to go with the flow, so if anything like pops on your heart, the Spirit's asking you to ask me a question, please just, I tell my kids, quiet friend, so just raise your hand if you wanna ask me something. Okay, so before we really get started, we're gonna be talking about the brain next, but the reason I really wanna talk about why is it so important to have like that foundation is with the brain, if it's not open to receive anything, you're not gonna learn anything, you're gonna be a broken record. And that's why it's so important to, again, have that firm foundation. The current state of our education system, if I were to say, it is out of, how do I put this? I'm gonna ask you, the percentage of kids that are actually learning on grade level right now, what do you think the percentage is? Yeah, Yuli, what do you think the percentage is?
65.
65 are proficient? Okay, that's a good one. Anyone else wanna give a guess? Yeah, yeah.
35.
Ooh, yeah. 33% of kids are on grade level right now in the United States. 33%. I get goosebumps with that. Why are our children not learning? I'm gonna ask you that question. Why do you think our kids aren't learning? Rachel?
Because their eyes are glued to a tablet all day.
Ooh, praise God on that. Yeah, Yuli, what do you think?
Because what's being expected of them is too high.
What is expected of them is too high. But I do want to say we should hold our children to high standards, right? And high expectations. So that's what we should be doing. We should be holding them to that high standard. But what is it that we're missing? Dan?
Firm foundation.
A firm foundation. A child is going to walk up into your space and immediately, I was saying this, Megan, they're going to sit down with you. If I don't know you and I'm going to sit with you and you're going to start asking me a million questions about what I know, I'm like, I don't even know your name. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're asking me these. What do you want from me? I don't feel safe, I don't feel loved by you, I'm not gonna show you what that is. Children have that kind of mindset. So again, 33% of children are learning and proficient in grade level things right now. And that's across the board, not just with math, not just with science. Science in the state of Minnesota, I think it's like 9% in the Minneapolis school district is proficient in grade level right now. That's mind-boggling. In the state of Minnesota, math in 2019, we were at 63.5%. We are now at 52% proficient. In reading, we were at 65 in 2019, and we are now at 52% proficient at grade level. And then in science, 2019 we were at 60 and it dropped to 20%. We are at 40% now for grade proficient, which is just mind-boggling. And it was actually like, I'm gonna say this because I was like trying to do research on the way home from a conference this weekend, and it was so hard to find the statistics, and it's like, why? Why is it like not open information of how bad our school systems actually are right now? And it's really because, I mean, if we think about it, spiritual warfare, the demonic realm, they don't want us to know. They want everybody to think that it's all peaches and cream, everyone's vibing, everyone's flowing in there, everyone's learning, things are great, because their graduation rate's the highest it's ever been. But clearly, half of our kids aren't even learning, but they're still being able to graduate. It's wild, you guys. Okay, so going into the brain. I'm really key on conscious discipline. That is where you are so consciously disciplined that you are able to pause before you do anything. That's the power of prayer. Ultimately, that's where I'm at. So many experiences. I have a dysregulated child in the hallway, freaking out. A teacher comes and gets me in the office. I have to check myself before I wreck myself. I gotta pray, Lord, I need to be so disciplined right now and see where my spirit is at, where my mind is at. Because if I come all elevated and dysregulated to that child, they're gonna get all freaked out, because when we think of spirits, the carnal realm is the world, the spiritual realm is like our inside when we become dysregulated. So if I come hot and heavy at that child's immediately gonna be heightened and not be able to even hear what I'm saying. I know you guys are reading the Culturally Responsive in the Brain book, an amygdala hijack. The second that brain is hijacked, it is black and nothing is working. And it's like we get so frustrated when kids aren't listening to us in that state, and we get so upset, like why are they so disobedient, or why are they naughty, or why are they bad, this behavior is insane. Well, it's literally not the child. The child is not in the executive state. So, survival state, the brainstem. What do you think the kids are asking when they're in a survival state? Yeah, Yuli.
Safety.
Yeah, am I safe here? That's the only question that they were gonna ask, am I safe? And so when you think about children with behavior is a cry for help, it's also a trigger. So now when they are triggered, they only can think of, am I safe here? So if you come in there and you say, sit on the carpet, crisscross Abel's house, what are you doing? Do what I'm asking you to do. you're not even validating their feelings, you're not even, we're not trying to be an enabler. You're just trying to validate that you hear, you see, and you understand what they are going through, but there's a better way to go about it. There's a better way to move through it. So that's the survival state. The emotional state, what do you think they're asking in the state? Sophia, what do you think they're asking in that state? Emotional state. Am I loved? Am I feeling connected here? Do you see me? Do you even care about me? Because if you're just, again, lecturing, I have a child at my school, when they were coming, they immediately were getting yelled at. They had an emotional, attachment from their parents, the mom left, now the child is dysregulated. All the teacher is doing is yelling at the kid to come in and play. He is asking, am I loved? The person who loves me just left. I don't feel loved here, so I'm gonna keep freaking out about that over there. And then, the executive state. That one's just simple. What am I learning here? So, if they are in the survival state or the emotional state, their brain is not ready to learn. They're not even asking that question. And I think that's the hardest thing as teachers. Sometimes we come in with our lesson plans that we worked so hard doing and creating all night, because lesson plans they have us creating with standards are crazy. And so we're spending all this time when we go in with our agenda and we're ready to teach, and then all of a sudden behavior starts. We don't have a firm foundation, we don't have that classroom management down, so now we're sitting here, we're stressed. Because I have a lesson that I need to teach and these kids aren't letting me teach it. That's when you literally need to release your agenda, release the control. We do a meditation at our school right now. We lay on our back, put our hands on our belly, we take breaths and we say, calm down, go with the flow, God's in control. We literally need to release the desire to push on our own agenda. So many organizations, so many systems push an agenda and it's missing the mark on so many things, and we're missing the mark on these children. And it's, to me, it's so not okay. So not okay. Okay, so the next part is gonna be building a firm foundation. When I say that, the first thing is secure relationships. Secure from Bing or whatever it is online now, said it's secure means feeling safe, stable, and free from fear or anxiety. I wanna hear from you for a second. When, say, I was talking with Rachel this morning and she's like, I don't really know what I might wanna teach yet, but when you think about these children, when you come in, how can you ensure that you are giving them a secure relationship? How can you, as the teacher in that room, whether you're teaching 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, the 16-year-olds in high school, Yuli?
Giving them a voice.
Giving them a voice, that's a good one, yeah. Giving them a voice, making them feel power in their advocacy. Right now we're talking about having big voices at school, standing up for yourself. Yeah. Anyone else? Allie?
Learning their individual likes and dislikes and just more about the individual.
Right. Just more about the individual. I was, again, also talking to Rachel this morning. How fast do you think that we start assessing kids in kindergarten? How many days after the first day of school do you think that we're assessing kids? 2. A 5-year-old is being assessed by what they know after 2 days of being in school. So when you think about it, you're spot on, Allie. Giving them a voice, hearing them out, and figuring out who they are. Because yeah, they're a student, but before they're a student in your room, they're a child and they come with a whole lot of baggage. And some of that baggage is glorious baggage. The Lord had protected them that whole time, but that's not every single case. These children are hurting, and especially after the pandemic, we all endured some type of level of trauma after the pandemic. So think of a child that was being locked up. Every single child that will walk into your space is going to have either, for sure, one knock of trauma on that, and that's isolation. And then I guarantee their parents had some fear or anxiety. Jobs were being cut, things were being lost. So how do you think that you can ensure that you're prioritizing that relationship before we have to start pumping out assessments? And that's where we're really missing the mark. All we care about is our agenda. No one actually cares about meeting these kids where they're at. So, with what the Lord has brought me through with my own research, with all the craziness that I saw down in Florida, looking at trauma, figuring out why is it that we are not learning? Why is it that they can't retain from me when I think I'm a great teacher? I think I'm able to do all of the lessons that we have or all of the different interventions. Lori, and I think you were the one that was talking about that, of just all the different strategies that we're being taught. we're awesome teachers, but for whatever reason in there, kids are still not learning, behavior's still insane, and now it's just fill out this behavior form, fill out this. Like in Florida, I had a child, level 3 autistic, nonverbal, and if I ever redirected him, he would sprint to a cement wall and would headbutt it. Out of the playground, I redirected him. He sprinted to a cement wall or a brick wall to headbutt it because he was given a screen and during the pandemic had never really been socialized back and forth. He got a lot of input, but he was never able to give any output. So we had no idea how to come into an environment and feel a sense of belonging and feel safety. And so when we really, really look at that, we're gonna go into the psychosocial stages of development with Eric Erickson. Did you guys talk about that in this classroom? Or obviously I'm sure you talked about it with your schooling.
Yeah, they probably did
class.
that at psych, right? A little bit of it.
A little bit of it, okay. So, I think it's awesome because we, in this room, we are teaching from birth all the way up until they go to high school. Our school right now, we serve, the littlest one we have is 5 months, I think is what Stephanie's son is now, 5 months? Or 6 months, and then we go up until kindergarten. But, that first stage is trust first mistrust. Children need consistency, predictability, and they need reliability. Again, when we talk about that firm foundation, we have to be set every single day. I mean, the world is crazy. We all know that. But at the end of the day, we have the power to use who? Our Lord Jesus Christ. And having that power allows us, like I said, I check myself before I wreck myself every time I go to a child that's dysregulated because of the Holy Spirit. Jesus didn't run up to us and be like all crazy and be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? No, he came calm, he came regulating, he came ready to meet you where you were at. And so when we really look at that trust versus mistrust, just kind of talking about how I did that, we don't have times to go slow. We don't, not with our education system and the way that we push assessments and dates and timelines and all that stuff. Off note, I have a girlfriend who teaches in Montana. Her kids are in 3rd grade. They are almost all at a kindergarten reading level. She now has 4th and 5th graders that are reading at a 1st grade level in her classroom to try to learn from her. And she had a, like a professional development meeting with her literacy coach, and they said we have to cancel out 8 remaining lessons to try to push because we need to get to this assessment. So our kids aren't learning, yet we're scrapping 8 lessons to try to push our assessment date. Does that make sense to any of you? No, it doesn't. It's like, what, that's not gonna solve any problem. And so with that right there, just talking about that trust versus mistrust, we have to go slow to go fast. And going slow to go fast is not what the society says. The society wants you to go, 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 go. So you, as the leader, to remember that a firm foundation is so key. You really have to identify, like, we have to build trust. These children have to trust that I'm gonna show up for them every single day. I'm gonna be consistent, I'm gonna be reliable. I'm always gonna have that heart posture of giving and serving them. Not one day I'm gonna show up and be like, actually, I'm kinda tired of you today. I'm gonna be rude and I'm not gonna give you what I gave you yesterday. That creates inconsistency, and then now that child's thinking, what's wrong with me? My caregiver is not giving me the love that they gave me yesterday. What did I do wrong? And then they start to spiral. So, and with the psychosocial stages of development, they are a fluid flow. That if you are in trust versus mistrust and you trust your caregiver, they showed up for you every single day, you can successfully and holistically move to that next one. And then that next stage is gonna be the autonomy versus shame and doubt. That's, again, for the kids, sorry, I was like calling you my friends, like my classroom. Some of you are gonna be teaching though in the early childhood. I don't know if you're gonna be in a preschool, I don't know if you're gonna be in an early childhood development center where you're serving babies, like you are at my site. But that's 1.5 to 3 years old, and they develop a sense of control and independence. That's really where they're trying to figure out who they are. Can I do this? Can I jump off of this? If we're standing there and be like, oh my God, don't do that. Oh my God, be careful. Oh my God, stop. Oh my God, don't. They're gonna constantly think something's wrong. They're gonna constantly think, oh, I can't do that. I don't have the strength. I don't have the independence to do that. So they're gonna start to feel shame or doubt in who they are and who their ability is. The Lord never shuts us down. He always tries to build us up and lift us up and expects us to do better, to do more, to serve the people that are around us, not shutting us down and keeping us in a box. So once that, then they go into the 3 to 5 years old, and that's where they start to develop a sense of initiative and leadership. They're really trying to figure out who they are. I'm sure if you guys have just children that you interact with in your life, you know that that's when they really want to do their shoes, they want to do their jacket. And you're like, you literally take 5 minutes and we need to go. But really just trying to give them that, like the power and the initiative that they can lead their lives. They can do something successful on their own. And then the next one is 5 to 12 years old, so that's gonna be really like those of you that are gonna be teaching up into the elementary school to the middle school, and that's industry versus inferiority, and that develops a sense of pride and peer and societal approval. We're gonna talk a little bit about spiritual warfare. At 5 years old, I don't know if you guys really know what it's like out there right now, but it is so straight up demonic what's going on in our school systems. The fact that a 5-year-old child is being presented with a paper saying, how do you feel today, circle the feeling, and then what pronouns do you want to use? So a child has no idea. They are just starting to develop a sense of who they are. And now we're all sudden throwing in there, I don't know, do you want to be a boy today or do you want to be a girl today? So these kids are already getting so confused, so they're not even thinking about academics, they're now trying to figure out who they are and their identity. And so if these teachers are manifesting that and sparking that confusion, these kids have no idea what to even learn, let alone because they don't even know who they are. And they're questioning that when that's not what their brains are ready for at all. That's not what developmentally they should be thinking about, being talked to about, or discussed. And it's a fine line between like loving everybody and giving that like social emotional learning and that like the critical race theory and all that stuff. Everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and validated and respected. But we're not going to enable and we're not going to project that it's okay to choose who you are and it's okay to like be so confused. And so, again, really developing that sense of peer and societal approval. Again, our society, they applaud you to transition. They applaud you to go through this stuff. They applaud you to like kind of divert away from what the truth is. And so that's why our kids right now, they're so focused on trying to get that sense of belonging, that sense of safety, that they're not even able to open up to learn because they're focusing on something completely different. And so that's why in that stage, it's so important to give them that like emotional literacy, right? Like giving them that emotional intelligence. And then into the like upper elementary or upper middle school into high school, that's identity versus role confusion. They really develop a sense of personal identity and self, really who they are in this world. And then, so within a classroom, if you are teaching like that younger age, birth to just 5 years old, it's really, really important to make sure that you are focusing on and even just remembering that if you want to open up that brain to learning, you have to move through these stages successfully. You have to make sure that they have a sense of trust for who you are. You have to make sure they have a sense of control and an independence for who they are as an individual within your space. And then you're also wanting to make sure that you are initiating them and their leadership and their ability to be able who they are. And then obviously so on and so forth as you move down that ladder, as you move up in grades and who you serve and who you teach. So that's the first stage. And again, going fast to go slow in my classroom, all I did was hang out with them. Ultimately down in Florida, the first month of school I was yelling at my assistant, I'm like, paperwork doesn't matter. Nothing else matters besides being with these children right now. No assessments matter, no curriculum matters. We need to be with them because we need to build the sense of trust. We need to build them up and get their independence and their control down, and then moving through that. And so that was done through play. That was done through sitting with them at the breakfast table, just talking to them about who they are. What do you have going on? I mean, that's how I learned that one of my little kids in Florida had watched his dad be taken by the police in the middle of the night and was running out of the door screaming for his dad. If I wouldn't have sat with him at the breakfast table, because he got pissed at me when I was saying mommies and daddies, and he was yelling, I don't have a daddy. And I'm like, whoa, now I gotta come and talk to you and hang out with you. And so just making sure that you put your agenda to the side, truly, and that's going against the grain though. Society does not want you to do your own thing, does not want you to go against the grain. They want you to fall in line with what they have for you. But if we are meeting kids' needs, we are taking the time to have that secure relationships and really moving through these stages. The other thing, talking about it is not just our job to be a teacher. We really are meeting the needs of a child. For example, with me, having that emotional neglect when I was little, I walked up into a classroom. If I'm seeking attention from a teacher, it's because I did not receive something. So when we look at the 10 basic needs of a child, this is every day. A child deserves these needs to be met. To be seen by their caregiver, to be heard by their caregiver, accepted and valued, to know that they are enough. They need to have affection, they need to feel protected, they need to be played with. The power of play, you guys, the power of play. They need to be instructed and educated, and then they also need to be provided for. If one of these needs are not met, this is usually when that behavior starts to come. Because when the behaviors that cry for help, hey, something is lacking, I don't have something met, I need you to look at that instead of getting upset or frustrated at this child, identifying like what's going on, why are you feeling this way, getting to like that root. And then, so moving on, we are gonna get into last thing I wanna say about this. This is holistic. This is holistically meeting a child where they are at. This isn't just trying to meet their educational needs and their academic needs and close that achievement gap. This is really trying to make them be successful. That like goes back to the question I asked you in the beginning. What is your role? Is your role just to teach math? Is your role just to teach reading and writing and science? No. We are entrusted, truly, not everyone is called to work with children. So the Lord is entrusting every single one of us in here to serve a child and to truly meet their needs and make them holistically be successful. And sometimes, like when I went through therapy, it was because we didn't have a mom and dad there. A lot of these children, single parent households, they don't have a dad at home. They don't have that structure. They're constantly lacking. So when we can come in, we can fill that void. Just like the Lord fills the void in our hearts when something went wrong, we can fill that void, and that's the power and authority Jesus Christ gave all of us. So, again, holistically meeting a child where they're at. All right, the importance of meaningful connections. So this is my little family down in Florida, my classroom family. The basics first, climate and culture of the classroom. How are you starting your day? Are you just expecting them to walk in? Are you just expecting them to immediately fall in line with what you got going on? Or are you building a climate and culture that makes them feel safe, seen, and heard? My little friend nonverbal that was headbanging on the wall realized he didn't feel safe. And singing, when you sing to a child, the difference of tone in your voice targets a different part of your brain, which will immediately stop that amygdala hijack. And then he could focus. And so what I would do is if he became emotionally dysregulated, I would hug him. And I would just sing, Elliot is safe with me, Elliot is safe with me. And I empowered my whole classroom culture and climate and culture, every single child, we would sing to him, Elliot is safe with me, safe with me. And I said, friends, if you are in housekeeping, sing to Elliot to tell him where he's at. If you are out on the playground, sing to Elliot. And that was just establishing a climate and culture that was not just with me, that was with every single kid in that classroom. And we'll really dive into more of the classroom management and the philosophy that God gave me. The other thing, love and limits. The Lord gives us the power of free will and free choice, but we all know what choice to make. We talk about it in our classroom all day. Good choices, bad choices. What would God expect of us? He would expect of us to do better. But we all need love and we all need limits. Those are boundaries. We all need to make sure that we know what is expected of us, but we also need to know when the line is overstepped. Down in Florida, I had a child, he completely destroyed my space. I held him accountable. He had no boundaries, not even at home. Parents had no idea how to handle him. I put him in a consequence in the corner because he kept sticking his tongue at me across the table, and I was like, all right, I don't even want to look at you. I love you, dude, but I don't even want to look at you. So I went and put him over in the corner, and he was sitting there kicking his feet, being like, I'm gonna kill Miss Finstuen. I'm gonna kill Miss Finstuen. And I went to him, Bricks, honey, do you know what that means? Yeah, I would shoot you and you go like this, and you're gone forever, is what that 5-year-old said to me. Oh, okay, so great. You really know what it'd be like to kill me. Great. But because he didn't have boundaries, I held him accountable. He freaked out. He wanted to kill me. And like when we see in this world today, what do? We get so dysregulated, we are not able to make a wise choice. We destruct, we destroy, we kill, we do all the things that the enemy wants us to do because we're not set in a firm foundation. And so what I had to do with him is I had to show him, you are the child. You have lanes. This is the green zone, and you've overstepped so far in the red zone. And so I stripped him. I stripped him of everything that he had. You can now come here because I lost trust. You go back to that first stage, you lost my trust, and now we have to go back through the stages of psychosocial development and get us back to a spot where we can then go in and learn again. So love and limits. Children need to know what their boundaries are. But that also means then you need to know what your boundaries are. You need to know and check yourself, what am I gonna be okay with? What am I not gonna be okay with? And you have to be consistent, because if one day you're not okay with something and one day you're okay with something, the next day they come and you're like, don't do that. And they're like, well, I did it yesterday and you didn't stop me. You have to be consistent and you have to know what your boundaries are so that when you come with love, you have your limits set in stone. Emotional intelligence. And this part excites me so much. So many children, like we expect children to just be kids, but they are literally us, adults going through childhood. We have to empower them with the emotional literacy of what they're actually going through. For example, at my school, we had one child who his mom, I think you know this, I think I've shared this with you. But a little child, his mom left him to be a heroin addict and told him that. And so this child literally told me, hey, my mom left me for drugs, and that's how what he brought in. If he got dysregulated or didn't get, if all of a sudden he became triggered, he would chuck chairs, he would push furniture, and his strength was the strength of a grown man. So again, when we think about spiritual warfare, a demonic spirit overtakes, his eyes literally go black, and they are not in their sound mind. Another example about spiritual warfare with behavior, a child in 4th grade in Florida that I worked with, sweetest child ever, but he'd get triggered, and one day he got up on top of tables, and he went like this, and his eyes literally are small slits, and they are black, and he was jumping from desk to desk, kicking everything off of kids' desks, just screaming at the teacher that they hoped that she died. Sweetest kid in the world. He was Baker acted twice, and the doctor said he is the most severe psychotic case in a child, but because of Jesus Christ, he is now a completely different child and is not anything like that anymore. But if he did not have the emotional intelligence of what was actually going on in that moment, or the ability to be able to respond and not yell at him from across the room, he has no idea what is expected of him. He has no idea what he's actually going through. And so when you meet with that emotional intelligence and you give them that literacy of what are you feeling, because when you see trauma in the moment, your brain, you immediately go to that, am I safe here? So a child at my current school saw all of this abuse, saw all of this trauma, saw all of this furniture flying across the room, immediately went into her, am I safe here brain, in her survival state. She's continuously in that survival state brain. We are working with a school psychologist right now to get her brain open to learning, but because she saw so much hurt and so much trauma, her brain has been stuck in that survival state. And if you don't give her the power of what emotional intelligence is, Remy, honey, you're feeling anxious. You're feeling anxious and labeling what that experience was for her. So many of us think that a kid can just move on. And that once the kid can just move on, it'll be fine. Just don't even talk about it. Don't even bring it up again. That's not empowering them with that experience. As an adult, I had to process what that experience was. As a little child, we don't give them, we want to protect them. We want to make sure that they stay in the childlike, well, they need context. Because if you don't receive context, children are going to constantly sit there and spiral in their own mind of, what was that? Why do I feel this way? Why did that happen to me? And if we don't give them the emotional intelligence to be able to process their environment and their experiences, we're missing the mark. We're failing them. We're not giving them the power and authority that we have in being able to identify what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and getting to the root of the problem. Next, how to prepare to teach in any environment. When I was asking the question at the beginning, establish your why. Why are you here? Are you here just because you want to teach them reading and math? Cool, that's great. We do need them to know reading and math, but what is your why? I think when you walk into that space, you need to understand why are you doing what you are doing, because God did not call all of us to be teachers. He called you to use your gifts and your talents in a very particular way, because damn, I'm not gonna be able to talk to the boys that maybe you're gonna be able to talk to the boys. I can't see your name tag, so I was gonna talk to all the boys. Brody, what's your name? JB. Like, I'm not gonna be able to go to a guy, because boy, like, every child needs a man. I mean, we need a mother and we need a father figure, but I'm not gonna be able to do what you are doing. So God is using you as men in the education system in a very particular way, more than all of us women in here. And we need you guys out there, because it's a battleground. And these boys and these little girls need you, but God called us all into this environment for different reasons. So understanding what is your why? Why are you wanting to serve children? The next one, prepare your heart posture. Again, I'm always like, Lord, check myself before I wreck myself, because if I bring all my baggage from the craziness of the morning, and I run over to that kid and I'm frustrated already, that child is not going to be able to receive what I'm trying to do for them, because I'm not even regulated. So prepare your heart posture every single day. Every single day. Again, the world is crazy. I was telling Megan, like, before I came here, I have 4 staff out sick today. The enemy kept saying, you don't want to go present, you don't want to talk to this class, you don't want to get in there, just go deal with the madness at school. And I had to continuously check my heart posture and know, this is why I'm coming here, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. The next one, set your foundation. That's your mind. Like, you have to make sure that you are level-headed and that you will have a clear mind. Like I said, again, the check yourself. When you aren't even in a clear mind and a clear conscience when you are with these children, are you really even able to see what is happening in front of you? Or are you so fixated on the madness that's going on inside of your brain, and then you're now projecting onto kids? Oh my God, I gotta do this, I gotta figure out all this stuff when I get home. Oh my God, stop doing that. I realize when I'm trying to control my children, that's a power trip. That's not meeting them where they're at. So I need to check myself, I need to pray. And I do. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, friends, like Miss Mercedes is kind of wilding out right now, I'm being a little controlling. We need to pray, and I need to shift my heart posture to more joy, to more gratitude with these children. And then stay student-led is that next one. And then in the next slide, we're really gonna talk about what does it mean and how can you be student-led. Again, that agenda. We spend so much time on our own agenda, and that's why, I mean, I don't think I should say this, but your lesson plans are very important, but sometimes, I know in education, like my lesson plans were so long when I was in school. They are now very, very vague. This is what I know I'm gonna do if I have the time. If this is what my kids are saying that they need, then I will get to that point. But if they're not showing me that that's what they need, then I'm not gonna teach my lesson. We did spring and weather before spring break. I ended up having to teach about snatching away toys because kids were yelling at each other and losing their minds, and they were like deliberately being snarky. So those were my lessons that day. How to have a good voice and not be snarky with our friends, and how do you not snatch, and how can you do that? So we role play a lot, and that's how you stay student-led. Again, your lessons are important, but are they more important than your students' needs and what they're screaming out to you, saying this is what we actually need? No. It's in that moment, that's when we really miss the mark.
I think that's really important to say, because I think that's just the reality that sometimes they don't get in teacher education programs, is because we have to feel like we have to teach all the pedagogy and the why and da. But that's realistic right there.
Yeah.
That you do. There's a time and place to drop it.
Okay.
I mean, the middle schoolers today were asking, why do we have the English language? You know, completely off topic, but they were actually engaged, and my student teacher like handled it well. And she stopped, she paused, she explained a little bit, and perked up some of the kids that were, you know, not engaged, like time and place, right?
Yeah. And thanks for saying that, Megan, because I feel like when a student asks you that question, and if you disregard it, what do you think is going to stay on that kid's mind your whole entire lesson? Your lesson, or the question that they were wanting to ask you? The question that they were wanting to ask you. So if you go with the flow of things, and you meet them where they're at, they're gonna 100% stay engaged, because they know, oh, you saw me, you heard me, you didn't push your own agenda, you cared about what I had to say in this moment. An example from staying student-led, I said we were gonna get to this point about when I was trying to get 6th graders' attention the way I get 4-year-olds' attention. That does not work. So I don't know what you guys learn in the middle school, high school, of how you get kids' attention. Like, I don't know, help me out. But I was not student teaching, I was subbing, and it was right after George Floyd happened, and then right after Dante White got shot in Brooklyn Park. I went up and I subbed for 2 days in a row in a 6th grade classroom. First day I walked in there, about half of the kids were gone. Had no idea what I was doing that morning. I stayed in my lane. I didn't even listen to the radio, didn't listen to any news, nothing, just got to the school. Again, half of the kids were gone when I walked in. They were headlocks, beating each other up, swearing at each other, spitting in each other's faces, and just madness. And I'm over here like, 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. Like, oh my God, what do you do to get these big bad boys' attention? Like, this is why we need men in our education system. But I kept pushing all the lesson plans, all the curriculum that was left out for me, the lesson plans, the books, the lessons, the activities. I pushed that all day. But all I did all day was battle behavior. All I did all day was say, hey, focus on me. Hey, look at me. Listen to what I'm talking about. Oh my God, this is so exhausting. You guys don't want to listen to me. I was getting burnt out within an hour of being there. I didn't want to keep doing it. I was frustrated. I go to lunch. I start talking to some of the teachers. They're asking me, how's it going? I'm like, oh my God, y'all, it's crazy in there. Half of them are even gone, and it's still crazy. And she's like, oh yeah, because they all come from Brooklyn Park, and they all live around the precinct. And Dante White got shot there last night, and they were all rioting. So they heard rubber bullets all night long. I went and taught for the last 2 hours of the day, drove home, bawled my eyes out. Because then that moment, all I did was push and care about academics, and these children were literally screaming that they were hurting. So, I don't need to get into the other part of that story, but the next morning I went to the school. I sat all the kids down, the ones that were gone that next day. So I think I had 14 of them, and I had 10 online. And we sat there, and I put all the lessons to the side, and I said, listen here, we're not gonna do anything right now. We're gonna open up the conversation, because I'm so sorry that I did not see what I needed to see yesterday. And the boys that were like headlock punching each other were like, wait, why are you sorry? And I'm like, they're like, we should be apologizing for our behavior. And I was like, I'm sorry because as your leader this day, I failed you. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know the trauma that you had endured. So you came in here so dysregulated, needing something different. You needed to be seen, heard, and validated, going back to those 10 basic needs. They didn't need the education at the bottom. They needed to feel protected and seen and heard and valued. And so I opened up the floor and I said, this is for you to talk. And I literally heard that 3 of them stayed up all night long and all they heard were pellets. That's all they heard. So how could I expect that child to come into my classroom that day and learn from me? That's like so out of my mind of like, how dare I push my own agenda when they literally endured so much trauma all night last night. And I guarantee their parents weren't there to talk to them about it. They just said, get on the bus and go to school. So opening up that and saying, we're gonna completely scrap the lessons, we're gonna open this up and we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna provide space for you to say whatever you need to say. Obviously, we're gonna be appropriate because we're in school, but you need to get something out here. And literally the rest of that day, they were learning like, wow, like it was awesome. But if I went to stopped and assessed what do these kids really need in that moment and give them that space, it would have been another day of them spitting at each other and punching each other and yelling and me just being exhausted. So ensuring that we're student led, and I'll really get into how you could do that at different levels. Okay, so this is something that, this is like my own, yes.
So isn't it like, is it okay to like pause your lesson plan to like go to your student if you see something is really off?
Oh, 100%, yeah. That's a really good question, Tina, because even with my kids right now, 4 or 5-year-olds, if I'm up there and I'm teaching and I'm like, oh my God, bubble in your mouth. Oh my gosh, stop touching your friend. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna try my tail off to teach this lesson. But if they're gonna continuously, that's when you put your plans on and say, okay, I'm listening. What do you guys need right now? What's going on? And turning it and giving it back to them. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, what? And then you're like, well, no one's listening to me. You guys are touching your friends. What's going on? And the younger ages, that's probably like a movement break. Standing up, getting their wiggles out, getting their sillies out.
I was worried about like, what if your supervisor was asking like, why is your class so slow?
And I think that's, I mean, my own philosophy, my own perspective with that is if you put your lessons aside in the beginning, really going slow to go fast, then you're gonna not have and minimize the amount of blow-ups that you're gonna have later in the year. But if you keep just ignoring all of that, it's gonna just become a bigger and bigger fire. But that is a very, very real thing of who's coming in your door, who's coming in to see as your supervisor. Me as a supervisor, I'm like, absolutely, put your lessons to the side. Do not teach what you had planned. Some supervisors, all they care about is academics. So it's really going with the flow of your classroom and in your space and who your supervisor is, but finding your why and saying, my why right now is not to teach them math. My why right now is to make sure that my students are being successful.
Students' needs.
Students' needs.
Should always, that'll get your administration off your back if you need to. I'm meeting my students' needs. That's the language you use, meeting their needs.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna really kind of go into the classroom management of it. So this is what the Lord walked me through last year of establishing a philosophy on foundation, regulation, and then education. So the tier 1 is that foundation. So it's your expectations, that's your why, that's your consistency, that's your boundaries, your love that you give every single day, meeting the basic needs, moving through those psychosocial stages of development, and creating an action plan. I think that's really, really awesome, especially when there's so much behavior. You need to ensure you know how you're going to handle that behavior. Because if all of a sudden it comes up in the moment, if you're like, oh my God, I didn't plan for this, I didn't prep for this, like you need to kind of have an action plan or just be proactive. And when we get into it, I'll really share how you can be proactive and what that looks like. So again, that foundation, the kids need to know what is expected of them. You need to know what you're expecting of them. So if you're just walking in and thinking you're gonna just go with it, that's when fires are gonna come everywhere. So if you have that strong foundation, you know your why, you know what you're doing, you know what is expected, all of that's been communicated. The next one is regulation. So within my classroom, we did, and I have a video of it, but we led daily meditations every single morning. In here, we can talk about prayer and asking Jesus to come in and the Holy Spirit to come in and really rest on us and give us that peace and that patience and that calmness that we need. In the public education system, obviously we can't do that. Which makes me want to ask you, how many of you want to go to public and how many of you, just if you want to go to public and that's what you're thinking you're going to go to, raise your hand. Okay. Is everyone else in private? Kind of what your vibe is? Okay. So in a public school, I brought the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ in there too. I pillow stomped with my room before the first week of school, or the first day of school. I prayed over every space in my room, because again, there's crazy stuff that's in these classrooms. The spirit realm, they linger. They really linger. Just context with that, I have a student in his house that he lives in, there's like scratch marks all over, and the parents found out that there have been so many people that have passed away in that house. Spirits are still there, and they wake him up in the middle of the night, and he points at them in the middle of the night in his room. So, the spiritual realm is real, and they are there. Another story with that, in Florida, my teacher that across the hall passed away 2 months into school, and after the classroom opened back up and she had passed away, it was insane. You could walk in and you could feel like the pressure of what was in that space. We Palo Santo'd it, I released the spirit, and the spirit left. And immediately the teacher was like, oh my gosh, it like feels light and airy in here now. Like the spirit realm is so real. And so going back into like the regulation, the daily student-led meditations, every single morning you are praying, or like just setting it. In the video you'll see we meditated every day in a circle. Mirror neurons, do you guys like know anything about mirror neurons in the body? That if you walk into it, you have a question, or you just were saying yes, you know? Yeah, that like a child is going to match your mirror neurons. If you're in a funk and you're all sad and depressed and you are like just mopey and all around, that child is immediately going to channel that same energy. If you're joyful and you're calm and you're regulated, they're going to match that energy. And so when you're set in what you have going on and you're meditating and you're all doing a breathing, we then after that we spoke life over ourselves. I am loved, I am brave, I am smart, I'm all of these things that the Lord wants us to believe about ourselves. That's what we are instilling, and you can do that in public school. We're obviously not talking about the fruits of the Holy Spirit and like labeling it like Jesus, but you can still speak that life over them. Then guided meditations for students to use to regulate themselves, empower their peers, and social emotional activities. When I get into the classroom management, we'll talk more about that regulation. So again, once you go from foundation to the regulation, you are so set and strong and firm. Your kids know how to regulate within your environment. They know what to do, they know where to go, they have that emotional literacy. Their regulation is now set. Then the last part can come, is that education part. That's when the brain remains in that executive state. You're observing, and again we'll get into it, but like you're observing, you're reflecting, and you're adapting, and you're remaining student-led. The power in this though, once you learn your foundation, once you give your students the power to be able to regulate and have that emotional intelligence, and then you're in the education, in tier 3, it just doesn't stop there. If all of a sudden a child, we'll just go back to that in the middle of the year, Dante White got shot in Brooklyn Park, all of a sudden all this trauma came about, do you think I'm gonna be able to walk into that classroom and educate them that day? No, we have to go right back up to what our foundation is within that space. What are we doing as the community, as the classroom community in that space? How do we regulate? And like when we're talking about the basic needs and all that stuff, you are seeing them, you're hearing them, you're providing that space. They're like, oh, she sees me, he sees me, he knows what I'm going through. I can learn now, because I don't have to bottle up and hold on all of this other stuff and think about all this other stuff. It's like, just like when we bring it to prayer and we bring it to Jesus, we release it. We're able to give that off to somebody. So I just want you to remember that, like reset on a need-be basis. It's to regain trust, whether that's they lost your trust, or you lost their trust, or they just don't feel safe in that environment anymore. So you have to constantly know that it's a cycle. You don't just stay in that education state. All right, going into the foundation and the regulation. So this is my calm island down in Florida. We obviously don't have seasons down there, so I built like a tree and it changed with the seasons, but this was ultimately their safe haven. I look at it and like my nonverbal friend was like so spoiled. He had a trampoline, a bubble floater thingy, he had just so many things in there, but within that space, every single child had a sensory box. And that sensory box, and this was my foundation, that this was what they learned the beginning of the year. I wasn't teaching math yet. We were learning how to go to the Calm Island and use our sensory bin. Our sensory bin was, we were targeting all 5 senses. We were also having pictures of our loved ones in there, so it was their personal thing. I mean, I'm sure when you guys are thinking about your classroom management, they want you to have a calm down space. Like we had one, but no one even knew how to use it. So we're not empowering them with what that actually is and what it can be done for them. So again, you have to teach them how to go into that calm island and use that sensory box and actually open it up and have it calm them down, not just play with it. We love to give fidgets, we love to give pop-its, we love to give something, and that's just a band-aid to a problem. You're not actually teaching them a skill, you're just giving them a fidget and saying, oh my God, just be busy. just be busy with this toy and let's just move on and like, let me do my job. You're not teaching a skill. So with the foundation and the regulation, every single, again, going fast to go slow, I recorded all of my teaching with an iPad and I watched it every single day at the end of the day. And I didn't like do all of it, but like with my teaching, for example, if I'm up here teaching this, do you know what happens behind you? And I don't know what Minnesota is like, if you actually have like an assistant, but like in Florida, in the preschool and in my preschool up here, we have an assistant. But if you're just one teacher, that's just two set of eyes. There's no way that you will see every single thing. You won't see the fires that happen, you won't see the social interactions that are going on, you won't see the triggers, you won't see who snatched the toy, you won't see in the bigger grades, you won't see who punched each other. Like you won't catch it, you just won't, because there's no possible way. So every day I recorded my lessons and then I recorded my center time. That was where my kids were playing and they were really interacting. If something blew up, I was able to identify what that blow up was and then teach an emotional regulatory activity that was linked to a meditation. So for an example, a lot of it was with my two spicy boys down in Florida. Whenever they would play in the blocks area, one always wanted to go and just destroy the other one's block because they didn't get what they wanted. In that moment, they become so dysregulated, now they're punching each other, and now they're just screaming at the top of their lungs, they're running to me to talk to me about it. I'm able to then check my recording, really see what happened. Did they even have a power of pause? Did they even take a moment to be like, take a deep breath, or did they just immediately punch? And normally it was an immediate punch because they're 5. But identifying, okay, the problem is with blocks and sharing. So that next activity or that next opportunity to be able to do a whole group learning, I replayed it. Like you literally, just like the way you would teach them how to count, you're gonna teach them how to interact in that social environment or in that social activity or, oh my God, social interaction between peers. So I'm in the middle building a tower. My assistant or whoever, if I pick a very responsible friend, we're playing and then all of a sudden they snatch my toy and I go to like I kick the tower down, I freak out. All the kids in that moment because it's modeling it, it's playful, we're playing, they see me playing. In that moment, they're then able, because I'm about to hit someone, I'm real pissed at you, I'm about to hit you because you just stole my block, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? In that moment, you pause and then you ask them, what do I do here? You give them the skill to help you as the grown-up. And then what would always happen then is I would ask my kids, okay, who wants to try it next? Who wants to show me that you can actually do something? And so in that moment, I'm about to hit someone and they say, no, Miss Mercedes or Miss Finstuen, you need to calm down, okay? I'm gonna calm down, I'm calm. They're like, well, you're not calm, I don't see that. Then I ask, well, what can you do to help me? And this is foundation, this is classroom management, like you are building the system of what to do in these moments when you are not knowing what to do. So when you're in that moment, they tell me to take a deep breath, great, I take a deep breath, but it's not working. And so in this book, Meditation for Kids, there's different activities for different things. And so the first one was a magic carpet ride. If you can't figure your situation out here, then you need to go and meditate somewhere else. And so I taught them the skill of what it looks like to leave. I'm not gonna show you, but like they would leave and they would go over there and they would get on the ground and they would imagine a magic carpet ride and they would just take deep breaths and they would talk to themselves. We know that when we talk to ourselves, my partner's like, you talk to yourself a lot. I'm like, well, I'm praying. And so it's like, that's ultimately prayer. You're trying to work out your solution by yourself, and that's when God can really speak to you or help you. And so in that moment, you're giving them, you're freaking out here, you're gonna go over here, you're gonna meditate. That's taking your deep breath. You're giving them the skill to regulate. Again, foundation, regulation. And then you're empowering them with that. And so just being able to constantly reflect and analyze. I don't know if everybody would have the freedom to be able to record your teaching and look at it from that way and really able to reflect in that same space. But it is so powerful because again, you are only 2 eyes, you can't see everything, so you need support, you need help, and that really is just a way for you to be able to go back and look at what it is that you missed. Are there any questions with that? Or being able to go into that more? Because with classroom management, you really want children to be able to have, obviously I've taught really, really young children, so it might not work with the high schoolers and middle schoolers, but having an immediate reward and having them be held accountable as a unit. They're a classroom family, you're not just targeting one child, because it definitely happens where then the rest of the kids are like, oh, we know that he's the bad one, or that she's the bad one, and now there's labels, and then now there's separation, and now there's division amongst the kids, and that's not great. So just really being able to then empower your community also. It's not in this PowerPoint, but there's another situation when I had a emotionally dysregulated child and I had a friend. She came up and she goes, "Can I please help him?" You are empowering them to ultimately be their community. I mean, out in the real world, teach them that the same thing. Out in the world, people need our help. We are called to serve the people that are in front of us. We are called to serve the hurt, the brokenhearted, all those things. That if we see someone who's hurting, we should be able to show up for them and say, "Hey, I wanna help you, what do you need?" Or "How can I show you to take a deep breath?" Or "How can I help you calm down?" So just really ensuring that you are giving them tangible things that actually make sense to them. When you come with your own agenda, you're trying to teach them what you think they need, but when you're observing and reflecting and analyzing your environment and what your students need, you are able to adapt that to what they need. The next slide is gonna just be a video about me, or like the start of my day every single day with my classroom in Florida, and just what that meditation looked like, and then after that we'll go into questions if there are any.